Welcome to Global Media Network, LLC. Passionate World Talk Radio is a wholly owned subsidiary of GMN, LLC. Our motto is educate, enlighten, entertain. And today on Lest We Forget Historical, one of our hosts, Lisa Skinner, will be introducing our guest for today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Lest We Forget Historical. And yes, we do have a very special guest with us today. His name is Jeff Rice. And let me give you his backstory. He is the founder and director of the company called APLUS, which is Personalized Learning Network Association, a statewide membership association whose mission is to advance the flex-based personalized learning education model and to support schools that provide a personalized education for their enrolled students. Now in its 22nd year, the APLUS+Network is comprised of more than 90 personalized learning public charter schools that collectively serve more than 90,000 kindergarten through 12th grade students in 56 of the 58 counties in California. Jeff has also been the longest standing member of the California Charter Schools Association, CCSA, member council, having served on it since 2004. Welcome to the show, Jeff. We are so happy that you could be here with us today. We are really looking forward to learning a little bit more about APLUS and what the inspiration was behind the founding of this organization. Now, I want to ask you a question. So I am one of the baby boomers, and I think all of us here fit into that bucket. And I have to say that I came up through the ranks of the public school system in California. And during the time that I was going through the public school system, if I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the public school system in the state of California at the time was rated one of the highest in the country. And then I raised two kids who came up through the public school system, except for junior high. I sent them to a private school. And I believe very sincerely that I received a pretty decent education coming up through the public school system. Watching my kids and parenting my kids while they were coming up through the public school system, I think they also got a decent education, although the school system was not ranked as high for them during their tenure as it was when I was coming up through the public school system. I think things have changed dramatically. And of course, it varies state to state, but if I'm not mistaken, California's public school system rates pretty low. I don't know if it's quite at the bottom, but it's pretty low from my understanding. So that makes me personally very, very concerned about the future of the kids coming up through our school system. And one of the things that I can say honestly that I've experienced personally for years now is the lack of skills. And I think that a lot of people kind of refer to it as the dumbing down of America. But I personally have seen these kids, they really lack writing skills, reading skills. And, you know, I am just blown away going to a store. And let's say my bill is $8.23, and I give them a $10 bill plus a quarter, and they go into panic mode. We're where's my phone? Where's my phone? Because they don't know how to change that denomination of money. So it's pretty scary. And so what this is all leading up to is, what the heck has happened to our public school system in the last 50 years? Is it true that it's basically has degraded to a point of no return? So I'm going to turn this over to you and let you fill us in based on your expertise and your experience and the inspiration that was behind you organizing A+.
Well, first of all, thank you, Lisa, for that wonderful introduction. And I want to say, first of all, it's an honor and joy to be here and to extend to you all my gratitude for inviting me to be on your show today. You are absolutely correct in your assessment of what has happened to the public school system here in California. We were very fortunate in the 1970s to go to a public school system here in California that ranked among the top 10 in the country. In fact, perhaps even in the top 5. And we have seen over the last half a century here in California, the public school system that was looked upon as a model declined to the point where now it ranks among the bottom 10. And perhaps for a time it was 47th. And it's still among the bottom 10. I'm not positive because we haven't seen the results from the state testing yet for this year, but it could still rank in the bottom 5 as well. And it really is a tragedy because a healthy, robust society, especially a democratic-based society, is founded upon a knowledgeable population, a population that is well educated, a population that engages in its own critical thinking and doesn't simply parrot the talking points of a very polarized country that is dividing us amongst ourselves. And your example, which I have experienced extensively, of a teenager or a young adult aged up to 25 years old can't even in their head do a simple math problem of addition and subtraction. And their reliance on a machine, that in this instance, a cash register, to tell them what the change is. And if you've also had the experience as I have, oftentimes in that instance, you'll give them the $10 bill and they'll punch that in. And then after they punch it in and it says, you owe $1, what was your example? $1.77, $8.23.
My bill was $8.23. Yeah.
And you gave them 10. So that's
$10 plus a quarter.
Well, wait a minute. Before you give them the quarter. So you give them the 10 and the change is $1.77, right?
Right.
We can all do that in our heads because we were educated in the 70s. And then you say, oh, wait a minute. I have a quarter in my pocket or in my purse.
Calmly throws them off.
It does. They don't realize they just owe 2 cents by now, plus the dollar.
Well, that's exactly right. They can't do that simple addition problem to add the quarter to the $10 bill and then subtract 1025 or 823 from 1025. And it's a simple problem. And the answer, of course, is $2.02.
And I found that I usually have to tell them
yes.
what the change is. And they're like, oh.
Yeah, my grandson's freaked out the cashier because we bought something at Kmart or Walmart. And I said, please give this to the cashier. And he says, how much is it again? And she told him. And he looked at her, and 20 seconds later, he said, without missing a beat, you owe my grandma, blah, 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 blah. And the cashier looked at him and she said, "Let me check." And he said, "I already did. I told you how much change you need to give her. Am I right, Grandma?" And I said, "Yes, you're right." And she looked at us and she said, "How do you do that?" And I said, "Well, back in the 50s, when the dinosaurs roamed, I was told to always bring it up to an even number."
Hey. Well, we kind of joke about this situation, but it's really
It's not funny. The
disheartening.
businesses,
It's very disheartening that this is what truly is happening. I think sounds like we've all experienced this scenario, and I find it just unbelievable.
And what's even more troubling is our youth has lost any kind of historical perspective of this country.
yes,
You might see Facebook posts where they've got an interviewer on the street, and a lot of times it's New York City. Sometimes it's on the beach at Santa Monica, outside of Los Angeles. Sometimes it's in other major cities of this country. And the interviewer has his phone and he's talking to people on the street and asking them basic questions. Who was the first president of the United States? Who named 3 signers on the Declaration of Independence? Who was the Civil War between? When was this country founded?
Well, it's funny that you should bring this up because this was the impetus behind Lillian wanting to create Lest We Forget, because of precisely what you just said. We don't want these future generations to not know about these events that have occurred throughout history.
And almost none of those people can answer those basic questions that we can answer in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
they don't even know what continents are, please. My son, when he was in school during the 70s, would go around his high school class and ask them to name the primary continents of planet Earth.
Yes.
And none of them could do it.
Yeah.
Not one of them.
Another common question is, how many states are there in the United States?
Yeah.
So you obviously
What is President Biden's last name? I'm serious. That question was asked, and the people who were asked the question could not answer it.
I have a comment I'd like to make. I worked at a preschool, but I have my son, he's 39, just turned 39. So we went to school in the 80s and 90s. He was in a special ed school.
Yeah.
But I have noticed when Josh was in the regular public school, they get a star for everything, even in the preschool. A star. We had back in the 60s and 70s, we had to earn that gold star, but now they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So even if they didn't do the work properly, they still get a star. Instead of correcting them and saying, this is where you made the mistake, we should be able to do it over to get that gold star. And now they're so worried about the child's feelings that they don't want to correct their mistakes. And you're right about the history. When my son was going to school, there was a little paragraph about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
They don't know about World War II. I taught my son, and they don't know about it. But that's what I had to add. Thank you.
So Jeff, at some point, you came to the realization that this was a terrible tragedy. So what was it that inspired you to kind of start this movement that you did, and the organization that you did, and what has happened in the 22 years that you have had it, and what's the status of things now, if you could share that with us?
Well, I don't have an education background. I have an MBA in marketing and strategic planning, and came out of that program being more interested in working in socially conscious industries. And so through the years, I've worked in ride sharing programs. I worked for the Bay Area ride sharing program out of San Francisco. I've run a health food store. I have gotten involved in solar energy and solar electric programs. And I was at a stage in my life where I was transitioning out of the solar energy field and looking for a new socially conscious endeavor. And a couple friends of mine who had been working in the California public charter school system said to me, there's an opening at our school for a marketing and public relations position. You should apply because we think it would be a good fit for you. I applied and I got the job. And then came to learn what the charter school movement was all about. And for those of you who don't know, the charter school movement in California began in the year 1992. California was the second state in the United States to pass a law allowing for public charter schools. Minnesota was the first, having done so the prior year in 1991. And there still is confusion and misunderstanding about what a charter school is. And so it's important to note first and foremost that all charter schools in California are tuition-free public schools, every single one of them. There's no tuition. There are no private charter schools. They are all public schools. But what distinguishes a charter school from a traditional public school? I brought with me the first paragraph of the act, the Charter School Act that was passed in 1992, that really well explains what a charter school's purpose is. But before I read that paragraph to you, I also want to point out that the charter school movement in California was a political compromise. Back at that time, and we did start to see the decline of the public education system in the 80s. You're absolutely correct, Lisa. The standards, the bar of expectations as to meeting the standards began to decline, and now, of course, it's worse than ever.
Do you have any reasoning behind how that happened or why it happened? No.
That's beyond my pay scale as to how that all happened, because I wasn't in that industry.
Right.
And so, but when I came in, what I discovered was the reason that charter schools came to being was as a political compromise against the voucher movement. So the voucher movement in the late 80s and early 90s came as a result of parents being fed up with the public education system and wanting the state to pay for them to either homeschool or go to a private school because they wanted to pull their kids out because they witnessed that their kids, even 30 years ago, were not getting the standard of education that they had enjoyed 20 years before.
Well, I did that with my kids for junior high. I was just fed up and disgusted with what was going on in the public junior high school, public. So, yeah. But then we moved back east for the next 6 years. And I think the education system back east, New York and then Maryland, was a step above what we were experiencing in California. So I allowed them to go back into the public school system. But no,
and just to give you an idea how the system's level of standards have devolved, back when we went to school, there was the expectation that we were proficient in high school level content.
Mm-hmm.
The things that were taught in high school, all secondary math, history, government, English, literature, and all of those things, we were expected to be proficient in all of those subjects. Then it declined to the point where the state introduced what used to be called the California High School Exit Exam.
Mm-hmm.
The high school exit exam was in effect for, I want to say, a couple of decades. And that required graduating high school students to be proficient in 8th grade content.
Oh, gosh.
8th grade content, not high school content, 8th grade content. And then more recently, within the last several years, the high school exit exam was abolished. And now there's nothing other than at the 11th grade, a student is required to take the state test. And the 11th grade is the last grade level that what's called the CASP test. It's the California Standards Test of Proficiency. And 11th grade is the last level that they have to take it. And it's not even a requirement for them to do well on the CASP in order to graduate.
Oh, so you answered my question.
Yes.
There's
All
no
they have to do.
There's no consequences of not doing well on the test?
There are consequences on the school.
Oh.
Because if the school doesn't score well on the California dashboard, and a large percentage of the dashboard is made up of or is weighted towards academic achievement results, and then if the school they have red, yellow, and green and blue colors to designate how well the school has done in a number of different categories. And if the school scores in the red and yellow, in a lot of those categories, it basically gets some bad marks. In the charter school world, if we fast forward, the charter school could not be renewed because a charter's period usually lasts 5 years. Every 5 years, and this is one of the distinguishing characteristics between a traditional district-operated public school and a public charter school. A charter school is actually held to a higher level of accountability than traditional public schools are. If a charter school's academic results, particularly in the years leading up to its renewal period, so in the last couple of years of its current period, particularly the final year, if those don't meet a certain standard of academic achievement and progress in those California dashboard indicators, and we won't go into the details of what those indicators are, but there's a wide variety of indicators that are in there. Graduation rates and college and career indicators and performance, not only school-wide, but for numerically significant subgroups and so on. If those results are below standard, below the expectation that is required in law in order to renew the charter school may be non-renewed, and they go out of business. It is estimated that if district public schools were held to the same standard as charter schools and forced to renew their public school license, for lack of a better term, that more than 800 traditional district schools would go out of business immediately.
Wow.
So
if I'm hearing you correctly, because in our generation, if we didn't meet these proficiencies that you're referring to, we didn't graduate from high school. Are you saying that these kids are graduating even though they're not meeting the proficiencies?
As long as they achieve a passing grade level and as long as they attain the required units for graduation, they graduate.
Okay.
So getting back to public charter schools. So California enacted the Public Charter Schools Act of 1992. The author of that bill was actually a Democrat named Senator Gary Hart. He is recognized as the pioneer of the California charter school movement, which is a bit ironic because it is the Democrat Party in today's world, at least a large part of it, that is most antagonistic and oppositional towards the public charter school movement. And we'll get into the reasons why later. There are a number of Democrats that stand in support and stand up against their Democratic Party agenda. And those are the heroic ones. But there are a number of elected officials in this state who do everything they can to oppose, undermine, and further restrict and sabotage the charter school movement from being able to do what the law says it is there to do. So let's get on to what this opening paragraph of the Charter Schools Act says, because it really brings clarity as to what the purpose of public charter schools are here in California. It is the intent of the legislature in enacting this part to provide opportunities for teachers, parents, pupils, and community members to establish and maintain schools that operate independently from the existing school district structure. I want to stop there to emphasize that phrase, that operate independently of the existing school district structure. Because under the school district structure, there are so many rules and regulations, it handcuffs visionary school administrators and teachers and schools at large from being able to be free and flexible to innovate and adapt with the changing world around them. And you look at what's happened in the last 50 years. Has the world changed significantly? Absolutely. In the last 5 years, the world has changed significantly. But yet, 99% of the traditional public school system is operating with the same one-size-fits-all classroom-only model that our grandparents and great-grandparents saw a century ago, that a lot of people call the factory assembly line model, that really came into popularity as America was industrializing and separating the population into people who go into the military, people who go on to college, people who go into factories, and so on. And so the public education system really became a conformity-based system. And even when we went to school, there were kids that didn't fit the system back then. And we kind of looked upon them as outcasts, as outliers back then. A lot of those kids got bullied and a lot of those kids were made fun of. Well, that still happens in today's world, believe it or not. But back then, the system really struggled to recognize that there are differences among students, that students learn differently, that students learn at different paces, that not all students can succeed in a classroom-only environment. There are all kinds of issues that undermine and prevent them from being able to do so. So the charter school movement, which was really started to provide opportunities for teachers, parents, pupils, and community members. So it takes it out of the hands of the status quo system and puts it in the hands of community members to establish a parallel public school that is independent of the school district structure and can be able to be a method to accomplish all of the following. First and foremost, improve pupil learning. And clearly, we've seen over the last 50 years how that has declined. Number two, or B, to increase learning opportunities for all pupils with special emphasis on expanded learning experiences for pupils who are identified as academically low achieving. And the number of pupils who are academically low achieving, tragically, has increased dramatically. In the last 50 years, absolutely. In the last 20 years, definitely. And tragically, as a result of the pandemic and post-pandemic conditions, which exacerbated the problem, the learning losses that took place during the pandemic are alarming. And most kids who suffered one or more grade levels of learning loss during the pandemic still have not recovered. And so it really brings to light the importance of the public charter school movement and why public charter schools need to be supported alongside of traditional school districts, because this isn't a discussion of either or. This is discussion of providing opportunities, as the first paragraph said, providing choices for parents and students to find the best public school match to give them the best opportunity to succeed and go on to a productive, successful life, as we discussed earlier, founded on a solid basis of education. So,
Jeff, you refer to this style of learning as personalized learning.
yes.
So does that mean that the curriculum is customized to each individual student based on their skill level?
May I elaborate on that as soon as I finish this introductory paragraph?
Yeah.
And then I'll get into why innovation is so important to be afforded to the public charter school movement, because it has been so stifled in the traditional public school system, which is one of the main reasons why charter schools are so important, and one of the main reasons why we were able to innovate with a personalized learning model within the segment of the public charter school movement. So, and that gets right to the third reason, and that is to encourage the use of different and innovative teaching methods. So you segued beautifully into that third point, which, yeah, there you go. Yes. And there are three more. So, four more. D is to create new professional opportunities for teachers, including the opportunity to be responsible for the learning program at the school site. I've interviewed hundreds of teachers, and one of the most frustrating things that are common among a lot of classroom-only teachers is they have been stripped of their ability to be classroom decision makers, to do what's best for individual students, to choose a different curriculum for a student who is struggling that might be different from what the rest of the class is learning, to allow a student to go at a different pace on either side, whether a student is learning at a pace that's faster than the rest of the class and is therefore being bored and oftentimes, looks for distractions and is the class clown and does a lot of other things because they're not challenged, they're not engaged. Or what is even more common is on the lower end of that bell curve, that students fall one or more grade levels behind and have no avenue through which to be able to catch up. And so being able to have a teacher be a local decision maker, to be able to help students. Today's teacher in many instances have had that taken away from them, and they have to follow a very strict, predetermined formula, even down to what page in a textbook they have to be on a given school day. And that has really severely harmed the ability of teachers to do what they do best. And that is develop meaningful relationships with the students and that's another problem, oversized classrooms, the students within their classroom environment, and to be able to, in their professional judgment, determine what is best for an individual student that is either struggling or has accelerated and could graduate that grade level in a semester if given the opportunity. Then the next one is provide parents and pupils with expanded choices in the types of educational opportunities that are available within the public school system. And this is where we get to so many students who are struggling in a traditional public school environment that doesn't recognize their individuality, that doesn't recognize their need to learn in a different environment, to choose a different kind of curriculum, to go at a different pace, to address particular learning challenges or learning interests, even things that they are engaged in, things that they aspire to. Those things are never addressed within the confines of a traditional one-size-fits-all classroom. And help schools established under this part to be accountable for meeting measurable pupil outcomes and provide the schools with a method to change from rule-based to performance-based accountability systems. So remember earlier I said that one of the primary destructive forces that undermine traditional public schools, the fact that it's become so rule-based and so rigid, to performance-based removes some of those rules and allows flexibility to innovate and to meet the individual needs of students that cannot be possibly met within the confines of that one-size-fits-all rigid classroom-based model. And finally, to provide rigorous competition within the public school system to stimulate continual improvements in all public schools. This is one that sadly has been underutilized because there's this us versus them mindset, an antagonistic view within the public school system that prevents the opportunity for extensive collaboration between public charter schools and traditional public schools. Traditional public schools all too often look at students as their entitlement property, look at their geographical boundaries as kind of their fiefdoms, and that no other schools have the right to come in and offer a better educational program or a different educational program to the students that they believe are their rightful property, and have those students go to another school because that school was not providing them with the services and the educational programs that were a good match for that student to be able to succeed. So charter schools are public schools of choice. And as public schools of choice, students can decide, and their parents can decide, to go to a public charter school instead of their local neighborhood traditional public school if they believe or feel that the student is not receiving the services that are necessary to help that student succeed and go on to a productive, successful life. So within the charter school movement, because of this flexibility and because of the push to innovate, and unfortunately, the traditional school system has not been very receptive to have the charter school movement share those innovations and share those best practices and learn from them and adapt to them and change the way they do things to be more flexible. And if there was one lesson from the pandemic, it's that traditional public schools who during the pandemic were exposed for that rigidity and showed that they could not adapt quickly enough to provide alternative educational avenues, settings, and venues for those students to continue their learning, which was not the case in the public charter school movement. The public charter school movement, because of its flexibility, was able to adapt to the school site closures and provide different types of learning opportunities for those students. Within the personalized learning and independent study charter school segment, we adapted the most quickly because we are at the high end of flexibility. So let's get to what a personalized learning model is. A personalized learning model tailors the learning plan to each individual student's needs. So for those of you who are familiar with special education has that same kind of a program. It's called an IEP, or an individualized education plan, because kids who have special needs or special challenges and who have been assessed and assigned an individualized education plan need to have a program that's really tailored to meet their challenges, meet their needs, and meet their pacing, offer them different kinds of curriculum and so forth. So we often say that a personalized learning model is like an IEP for every single student. Because really, when it comes down to it, every single student is, believe it or not, a human being. And every human being is different. Every human being has their own unique spark that has their own interests, their own personalities, their own engagement, their own aspirations, their own goals. And while you can take all those individual human beings and put them in a classroom in a traditional public school system, we know that at least half of them will fare well. But what about the rest of them? What about the other kids, the 30% on the low end of the bell curve and the 20% on the high end of the bell curve, where that's not a good match for them? What about them? And what about their needs? So of the 6 million kids who are currently in public education in California, we believe that up to half of them could benefit from a more personalized education that is tailored to their needs. And when we say tailored, we mean in every type of different learning mode, meaning how they learn, what they learn, where they learn, when they learn, and with whom they learn. Now, there are still the California state standards, and all public schools, including public charter schools, must adhere to those standards. So when we say what they learn, we're not talking about the specific standards. We're talking about how to climb that mountain to reach the top. So rather than a very well-grooved single path that leads to that mountaintop, you've got a wide variety of different pathways that can get you to that mountaintop in all of those different variables of learning. And that's what a personalized learning model does. So a child is not required to be in a classroom 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. A child, and oftentimes we liken it to a university model. When you go to a college or a university, oftentimes you're only on campus 2 or 3 days a week, and you're only going to classes in a large lecture hall for maybe 2, 3, 4 hours a day. The rest of the time, you're doing your learning responsibilities that have been assigned to you on your own, or with the help of a tutor, or if you live locally, with the help of your parents, or a peer, or you're doing research and looking it up online, or back in our day with Encyclopedia Britannicas. But now they have the whole world at their fingertips. All they have to do is go on their mobile device and within seconds, Google a topic and find all kinds of supporting research on it. So a personalized learning model combines the flexibility of an IEP with the flexibility of a university model and tailors that learning program by being responsible for offering choices in different curriculum that are all standards-based, different pacing, different learning modalities, whether it be online, whether it be at home, so you can learn it. You can learn from home. You can partner with community businesses and do community-based learning. You can take UCA to G courses. You can pursue career technical courses, CTE courses that the school offers. You can do apprenticeships and internships. And if you have a passion for being an auto mechanic, you can learn basic subject content that is all geared toward history around autos and details around autos. Or if you're into robotics or other sciences, you can join a robotics class and even be engaged in competition in local, regional, statewide, and national robotics team competition. And the latest thing to emerge is esports. There are esport competitions now where kids compete against each other in gamification and games that are online. These are all things within the realm of a personalized learning model that a personalized learning public charter school supports.
Now, so based on what you have shared with us, this model, education model, was introduced in 1992. So there's been...
The charter school movement was introduced in 1992. I did not come into the charter school movement until 1999, and just by observation noticed that there was a segment, and the most innovative segment, in my opinion, within the charter school movement that had emerged, but was, for lack of a better term, suffering from an identity crisis.
So in that period of time, because that's a couple decades that it's been around.
Yes.
Statistically speaking, what have we seen as far as the difference in learning acuity by the kids who come up through this model versus the traditional public school system model?
Well, in the charter school movement as a whole, we have seen that consistently the charter school movement students outperform similarly situated students in traditional public schools, particularly for disadvantaged subgroups. So
it sounds like that would be,
yeah.
I'm not surprised.
So socioeconomically disadvantaged students, ethnic minority students, African American, Hispanic, and so forth do better in public charter schools. Special education students and special needs students do better. Students who have been bullied and are afraid to go to school. Students who are LGBTQ identified students and who struggle to find their way in traditional public schools do better in a public charter school, and so on. And then for specifically within the personalized learning public charter school movement, we find consistently, because the kids that enroll in a personalized learning school, we find on average are far below grade level standard, far below.
So Jeff, what would you like the parents who are listening to this show to know, and what resources are available that they can learn more? So, and also, can you kind of touch on why more students are not enrolling in this model? Is it because people don't know about it? Is because people are afraid of it? It's because they hear bad things about it? I mean, what's circulating out there that you would like people to know?
Up until very recently, the majority of voters in California still believed that charter schools are private schools. When they are told, for example, you meet somebody in an elevator and there's the old elevator speech. Somebody says, "So what do you do?" "Oh, I work for a charter school." the first question that comes out of the majority of people's mouths is, oh, how much does that cost to go to a charter school? And what does that tell you? That tells you that they believe there's tuition and that it's a private school. Just recently, and I think as a result of the pandemic, more and more of the public has awakened to the fact that all charter schools in California are public schools. And in fact, the approval rating among voters just this last year from a survey done by the California Charter Schools Association found that the majority of the public now supports and is in favor of public charter schools. In fact, charter schools today have the highest favorability rating in their entire history. So what I would tell parents is, if you're not happy in the traditional public school, or even in the public charter school you're in, because all public schools provide choice. So it's a matter of providing robust choice and opportunity for all kids within California. And parents need to know that they are empowered with choice. They are empowered with hope and opportunity. And all they have to do is some research. If they're not happy with whatever public school choice they are currently involved in, they are empowered by California law to make a different choice. And all they have to do is do a little bit of research and find out what's available to them in their area. And it can be anywhere from another traditional public school where they can do an interdistrict transfer, to a classroom-based charter school, to a Montessori charter school, to a personalized learning public charter school, or another kind of independent study or classroom or model that is beyond the classroom. And if they are specifically interested in finding out more, I'll give a few resources. For our own member schools, we have 90 plus personalized learning public charter schools in California. They can go to the APLUS website, which is www.theaplus.org, to find out where our member schools are located. And even if they live within the county or within an adjacent county of where our schools are located, their students can enroll because they get an assigned teacher for their student that can work with them on a weekly basis, online, and so forth with their learning program. So they don't have to be in person 5 days a week or even 1 day a week unless they need that kind of support. And then to find out about charter schools in general and what other kinds of charter schools are available, they can go to the California Charter Schools Association website, and I believe that's charterassociation.org. I don't have that one in front of me, but it's the California Charter Schools Association, so they can look that up. The California Department of Education also has a section on charter schools and frequently asked questions about charter schools, and also a charter school directory of all the charter schools that are currently operating in California, numbering about 1,300.
What if you're not in California?
Most states now throughout the country have enacted charter school laws. And what folks should do in other states is to look up their charter school association for their state and to be able to contact them to find out more information about what public charter schools are available to them.
Wow, Jeff, this has been unbelievably informative and educational. Betsy or Lillian or both, do you have any questions for Jeff or anything that you'd like to comment on before we say goodbye to our wonderful guest?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Betsy.
Jeff, what is a parent What's the process enrolling your child in a charter school?
So all charter schools have an enrollment form, and most of those enrollment forms are available on the charter school's website. So they would simply go to that section where the enrollment form is located and fill it out and submit it. Some charter schools have a student capacity. And so if that capacity is attained, then the student would have to go on a wait list and through a lottery drawing as required by the state to see if the space is available, if that student would be able to be drawn to be able to attend that charter school. But in general, as required by law, charter schools must enroll all pupils who wish to attend. So as long as the charter school has room and it's a good match between the charter school's program and the student, that student has the right to attend a public charter school that's best for them.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I learned a lot. Very informative.
Yes.
You're very welcome. Again, it was an honor for me to join you today. Thank you again for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining it. I found it very interesting. And you sort of answered my question, what the biggest difference between a charter school and a Montessori school is. And the answer is money. They can be quite costly to enroll your son or daughter in. And I think for some kids, putting them in Montessori is a good idea. But I can see where there have been many kids who've graduated from Montessori that were incompetent just as much as the kids walking out of a public school situation.
And Lillian, just for clarification, there are both private Montessori and public charter school Montessori schools available. So if somebody wanted to explore the opportunity of going to a Montessori-based school, they could go either to a public charter or a private Montessori. And of course, if it was a public charter Montessori school, there is no cost. There is no tuition. Only in the private Montessori program would there be a corresponding tuition.
Jeff, I have one last question for
Sure.
you, if nobody else does. I'm curious whether when a parent enrolls their child into a charter school model environment, are the parents asked to make any kind of a commitment or contract or anything like that to be involved? I mean, I remember when my kids were growing up, I remember having to sign a statement saying that I would read with my kids for a minimum of 15 minutes a night. And they held us to that. And I know that those things don't, or I'm assuming those things really don't exist anymore in the public school system, but do they ask parents for any type of involvement, commitment to ensure the success of the students with their learning process?
Well, in a personalized learning public charter school environment, it is almost essential.
I believe
a parent is involved in their child's learning. In fact, they all personalized learning public charter schools fall under independent study, which requires that a written agreement either per semester or per school year be signed by the parent, the pupil, the supervising teacher, and if the child has a special education program, by the special education teacher. So the parent takes a more active role by choice to be involved in their child's education. And one of the unique attributes of the personalized learning model is more parent involvement and the collaborative partnership that is developed in coordinating and developing a personalized learning plan for the student between the assigned teacher, the parent, the student themselves, and other expertise within the school. We often use the analogy that it's like taking a student from the back seat of the car when they're paying no attention to where the driver's going to get from point A to point B and putting them in the driver's seat and saying, okay, you're now responsible for getting to point B. Well, that student now suddenly becomes engaged and is paying a lot more attention to where they're going and how they're getting there. And that's what happens in a personalized learning model. Students become more engaged, parents become more engaged, and teachers become the decision makers to guide a student to success along with the parents.
Does that commitment scare families away from going through this type of program?
If a family is not well suited to take on that responsibility, then it's not a good match for them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's not well suited for everybody. That's why choice is so important.
Yeah.
That's why we need to have a robust array of options available. Because while not all students are suited for a traditional public school model, not all students are suited for either a classroom-based charter school or a personalized learning charter school or other kind of charter school model. And no one's pretending that any single model is going to be the silver bullet or the catch-all for every single student, because everybody's different. So we should all be supporting, our primary agenda should be to do what's in the best interest for every student in California and offer a wide menu choice of options in every community that a student can choose to ensure their greatest potential for success in education.
Well said. Anybody have anything else for Jeff before we sign off? This has been terrific, Jeff. Thank you so much.
We might ask him back. Okay, Jeff, why don't you provide an email, a business email, where parents or educators can reach you in California? We do have a very large audience in California that listens to our programs.
Here's the chat. Okay.
You're putting it in the chat.
I'm putting it in the chat.
Okay. Very good.
Perfect. Okay. I learned so much from you today, Jeff. This has just been so informative, and the three of us really appreciate you taking your valuable time to come on and raise awareness about the choices and the options that are available to.
Absolutely, because even the business environment is beginning to complain loudly that the kids who are coming in, even with their bachelor's degree, are incompetent. They don't have a clue of how to operate. And I'm not blaming the secretaries. We're talking about the kids going into management positions with their master's or business degrees or their bachelor's, because they haven't gotten common communication skills.
Well, it's the same thing. It's the same thing that happens in higher education too. That the college level kids are not coming into that environment with proficiency in core subject areas. And guess in both of those situations, guess who has to incur those costs? And that's why they're so up in arms. The business community and the colleges and universities have to incur those costs to catch those kids up. And it's stretching them beyond their capabilities.
Absolutely. All right, folks, for those who cannot see into our chat, Jeff has graciously written everything down. So it's A+, capital A, capital P, capital L, capital U, capital S. We all know, look, an addition sign, website, www.applus, the APLUS.org. And you can reach Jeff at jeff@theaplus.org. Or if you're not a fast writer, you can email me at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com, and I will provide you with this information. Lisa, could you please provide your email?
Yes, you can reach me at dementiawhisperer1@gmail.com. And thank you all again for listening in with us today. We'll look forward to seeing you back here for next week's episode. Betsy?
Yes, I do have a question for Jeff. Actually, I have two before I give my email. Are there rules for children who misbehave? Who do they get expelled? Do they try to work with them first? And also transportation. How is transportation provided?
First of all, rules. Yes, there are rules that are there for appropriate behavior. That is, there are rules that are mandated by the state with regard to truancy, with regard to expulsion, and so forth. And there are also rules that are established by policy at the school level. So that answers that question. And so students are required in all those situations to abide by those rules, or there are consequences that are established. By the way, I'm putting in the chat also the California Charter Schools Association website, which is ccsa.org. In the case of transportation, for a classroom-based charter school model, yes, transportation is frequently provided by the public charter school, just as it is for a traditional site-based charter school. In a personalized learning type of public charter school, where some schools don't have school facilities and others do, it varies. And so in urban areas, oftentimes those kinds of schools, especially who are working with disadvantaged kids, will utilize public bus systems and so forth, and establish facilities that are located close to bus routes. And in other situations, they do not offer transportation because they're not predominantly set up for classroom-based instruction, so kids learn remotely.
Okay, thank you. My email is Sloan, SLOAN, Betsy, BETSY 31@gmail.com. Thank you again, Jeff, for coming on. I learned so much. And thank you everyone for joining and listening.
Your call to action? School is about 2 weeks away, depending when you go back. I know in the mid section of the country, they go back almost the second, third week of August. And in some places, then they go the last week of August, or others wait until after Labor Day. But this is a good time for you to decide how you want your son, daughter, niece, or nephew to be educated this year, and to get a really good education. So please contact one of us for the information. If you live in the state of California, maybe considering a public charter school, and see the difference, I suspect, within 30 days, which would be tremendous for your kids. I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. You can see this at our website, passionatworldtalkradio.com, also on YouTube, YouTube.com, PWR Network, PW Talk Radio, and you can view it there. You can view it on our blog, on the website, and the usual places, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram. We are there. Come and listen and get are mindful of good information. Thanks everyone for listening. And remember, please keep listening. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.